Tillerson says that the president plans to get tough on NATO at that big terror meeting tomorrow. To Jonathan Hanna on that, on how NATO will react. I guess, John, what he has said in the past is that NATO should do more to contribute its share. Each country, I think, 2% of their GDP into these efforts. Very few do. And I was surprised, even some of our more loyal allies who presumably have the money, but they don't want to seem to pony up more. Maybe that's changing, but how will he be received on this issue?
Well, I think he's certainly shaken them up over the course of the last year, Neil. They're listening, and I think they are so desperate for U.S. leadership and U.S. power and for the United States to remain engaged in Europe against these unbelievable threats they face, not only from Russia in the east, but from the south in terms of ISIS and terrorism and these uncontrolled waves of refugees, that they're going to try and go a long way to talk Trump into believing that they're going to be ponying up much more in terms of their defense spending.
You know, obviously, you've seen the foreign press and how they've been very, very critical of the president. The closest comparison I can make of a Republican predecessor would be Ronald Reagan, their initial skepticism that the United States had elected an actor, let alone someone who I forgot had been a two-term governor of California, but that they were very skeptical. Is President Trump in this journey winning some of them over? I mean, whether it's the Saudi deals that total over $100 billion, or how he has tried to prod the players in the Palestinian-Israeli crisis to work together toward peace. I mean, has any of that changed?
Well, certainly, I think the president made tremendous strides in the Middle East. The welcoming in the Arab and Islamic world must have had Putin and President Xi from China, shaking in their boots. They could never have commanded that kind of audience that the president of the United States did. Now, Europe, I think, still remains a harder audience for the president. They're a much more cynical audience, and they're simply much less attuned to the seriousness of the kinds of threats that we face, particularly from the threat of terrorism. The fact that NATO has not declared war on ISIS is just a striking absence of commitment to the fight of our lifetime.
You know, John, the one thing I can't understand, I guess, you know, I can understand seeing and relying on the United States to lead everything. And yet, whenever we're trying to share that burden, or even the resistance that Barack Obama encountered when he wanted a more globalist view, I guess, and that we would always do things in concert with all our allies. Even that type of effort is met with resistance because most seem to prefer the United States just do it, pay for it, ringlead it, handle it, deal with it. This president seems to be saying here, I'm open to dealing with a lot of this stuff, but you guys got to pony up more. Is that the gist of it?
I think it is, Neil. I mean, this free rider problem has been going on for forever. We had a Secretary of Defense in the 1970s that wanted NATO countries to pony up 5% of GDP to defense. Now we're down to 2%. I think the president has got to stay on this. I do think he's shaken them up in Europe, and now he and General Mattis and Rex Tillerson have got to stay on top of this problem and force these guys not only to spend more, but to spend more in the right direction to meet the key threats that the West now faces from terrorism, Russian aggression, refugees, whatever it is. We've got to be spending more and doing better to fight combat these threats.
All right, John, thank you very much. John Hanna, the former National Security Advisor to Dick Cheney. Good seeing you again, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.